Hi, my name is Steve Roskams, and I worked with Friederike from the time that she first arrived in London, almost 50 years ago now. And reflecting on the meeting we had at Woodstock the other week, I just thought it was a shame that there wasn't an opportunity to acknowledge and talk about the significance of her archaeological work a bit more fully than. And so I offer this as a contribution to that. I would have made this dinner talk at the actual event, but I didn't feel well enough, and so although I'm not all that well now, what I say will be probably still be a little bit stilted, but I hope it gets the message over. The thing that struck me about Friederike, I felt that her real skill was, and why archaeology appealed to her really, was her ability to make order out of chaos really. And one thing you can say about the deeply stratified archaeological sites in the City of London is that they are chaotic and complex, involving many tens of thousands of layers, and the job of the archaeologist is to put that into a coherent sequence and understand its implication for our understanding of past development. The time that Friederike arrived there in the mid-1970s was a very great significant really for the foundation of a fieldwork profession at that time, not just in the UK but across Europe really. It was a time where procedures were being defined and standards were being brought in for archaeological recording, and Friederike's contribution was very much part of that process. And indeed, I think many of the people who attended the party at Woodstock were part of that as well. Speaking for myself, that time was tremendously influential on my subsequent work. For instance, I wrote a book about excavation, which builds on the foundations that were being laid there. And that book has been distributed quite widely. It's been translated into Spanish and is about to be published in Chinese. So you can see that the significance of these ideas stretch well beyond the UK and London in particular. Friederike was very much part of that process. I don't think we did talk about or acknowledge the MPhil that she obtained. An MPhil, for those who are not used to this, a Master of Philosophy is somewhere between a master's qualification and a PhD, and in this case involved the production of a 50,000 word dissertation which was examined at a viva. And what Friederike did for that piece of work, she travelled around all the major professional units in the country looking at how they carried out their recording work, and then with all of that information in mind, she put her own stamp on it. She created out of that diversity some sort of ordered argument on what they had in common and where they diverged and why that might be. And at the same time as producing that MPhil, she was also involved very integral with the interpreting stratigraphy group, for which she published a variety of articles really. And in case you think this is just ancient history, it remains very relevant right through to the present day. For example, I was at a conference of the European Archaeological Association on archaeological archives, digital archives, last summer, and one of the speakers at that conference happened to be a German colleague who was in charge of doing the archaeological recording of a railway line that was going through the entire extent of Germany. And one of the problems they had in their recording systems was that the Länder, the different sections, administrations within Germany, had very different approaches and standards. And so making sense of the archaeological records from this linear project was particularly problematic, and that's what they wanted to discuss at this conference. And one of the main things that they pointed out was that they had no real procedures in Germany for doing the post-excavation analysis of the work that was generated in the course of investigating this railway line where it was running through the country. And at that point in the conference, In fact, a Swedish archaeologist said what you need is a post-excavation manual, for example, like the one that was written for the Museum of London by Friederike 30 or 40 years ago. So at the risk of thinking they might be reinventing the wheel, it shows, I think, the continuing importance of Friederike's work to archaeology today. And chatting to Tim about Friederike's work with stained glass that he carried out with her. He also mentioned that she produced a manual of how that should be, the standards that needed to be approached in that work as well. So once again, even in a different sphere, Friederike was busy creating order out of systems and procedures out of the diverse chaos of all of that evidence. So if you were wondering why there was quite so many archaeologists who came along to that occasion at Woodstock, it wasn't just because for the free food and drink, I'm sure there was an element of that, but it was because Friederike and the sorts of contributions that she made were a formative part of all of the of how approaches were developed in the 1970s and through the 80s. And those ideas that she contributed remain relevant right the way through to the present day. Thank you.